All right, lesson 5. This is the last lesson of the unit, dividing polynomials. So when multiplying polynomials using algebra tiles, the solution is determined by finding the area of the rectangle. When dividing polynomials, the area of the rectangle and the length of one side are given. The length of the second side need to be determined. So if we're looking at this polynomial here, 4x minus 6 divided by 2, the area represents the numerator and the side length represents the denominator. So you're actually looking for the other side length. Okay? And how you go about solving this is looking at what multiplies to the stuff in the middle. And this is an x, and we're multiplying, let's erase this here. We're multiplying a 1 by something to get x. Well, if we're multiplying by 1, that something has to be x. That's going to be shaded in. Okay? And the same thing follows, that this is also going to be x. And then what times 1, let's see if I can just erase the highlighting portion here. There we go. What times 1 will give you negative 1? And that something has to be a negative 1. So after we've divided, the result becomes our answer. So 2x minus 3. Here we have another example. Our area is the negative 6x squared plus 3x. So our area is this stuff. Okay? And we're dividing it by 3x. So how do we go about solving this? Well, this is the same length as this. And what multiplied by a positive x will give you a negative x squared. And that something has to be a negative x. If you're purely looking at it by length and width, this, whatever you're drawing here, has to be the same length as that. Okay? And what times x will just give me x? Well, that something has to be just 1. If it was negative 1, this would change to negative. And since everything's positive, it's got to be a positive 1. So if we divide negative 6x squared plus 3x by 3x, our answer is negative 2x plus 1. So maybe you notice something, that negative 6 divided by 3 gives you negative 2, and x squared divided by x gives you x, and then 3x divided by 3x gives you the 1. And on the first one, we had 4x divided by 2 would give me 2x, and negative 6 divided by 2 would give me negative 3. So the rule is, when dividing polynomials symbolically, divide each term of the polynomial in the numerator by the monomial in the denominator. Okay, so the distributive property states that you can distribute a factor that's being multiplied by a sum or difference, and likewise you can distribute a divisor that's being divided into a sum or difference. So, in the previous lessons, if we had something like 2 multiplied by 5 plus 2 or something, you would have to multiply both parts. Okay? And in this case, we can actually simplify our numerators here first. Okay? We can do it multiple ways. So the first one, if we combine 10 plus 4, we get 14 over 2, which gives us 7. In the next one, if you think about the denominator of 2 being equal to multiplying by half, then using the distributive property, 1/2 times 10 is 10 over 2, and 1/2 times 4 is 4 over 2. Well, 10 over 2 is 5, and 4 over 2 is 2, and 5 added to 2 is 7. So we still have the same answer. And the last one, we can also just divide each part. So 10 divided by 2 plus 4 divided by 2, well, we just did this. 5 plus 2 is 7. So we can end up at the same answer using a variety of methods. So here's another one. 15 minus 6 divided by 3 gives us, if we simplify the numerator first, 9 over 3. And 9 over 3 simplifies to just 3. In the next one, we can multiply each term by 1/3. A denominator of 3 is equal to 1/3. And if we distribute, we get 15 over 3. And we get a negative 6 over 3. And this will simplify to 5. Take away 2. Leaves us with 3 again. And the last one, we can divide each part. Remember to include the negative. So 15 divided by 3. And 6 divided by 3. So 5, take away 2, gives us 3 yet again. Similarly, when dividing a polynomial by a monomial, we can divide each term of the polynomial by the monomial. In other words, divide each term in the numerator by the denominator. So this first one, we only have one term, so it's going to be negative 14 divided by negative 2. Well, there's no variable to simplify, so we're simply simplifying the numbers there, the coefficient by the coefficient of 14 and the denominator of negative 2. So 14 divided by negative 2 will give us negative 7, and we still have the y. Negative 8m divided by negative 2, that's the same as this form. So the negative 8 and the negative 2 will simplify to positive 4, and you're still going to have the m kicking around. The last one here, you can simplify the 18 and the 3, and you can simplify the x squared and the x. Now the quotient rule says that if you have a power over a power, you're going to subtract, oops, that is not a 2. You're going to subtract exponents. Okay? So 18 divided by 3 gives us 6, and x squared divided by x leaves us with just x. Negative 12c squared divided by negative 4c, well, I think about it like this. And you can see that the negative 12 and the 4 will simplify to negative 3. And the c squared and the c will simplify to just c. Well, here's another example. And we have two parts of the numerator, and we only have one denominator. So in previous examples, you could see that you could divide each part of the numerator by the denominator. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to divide negative 6x squared divided by 3x and positive 3x divided by 3x. So the first part will simplify to negative 2x, and the second part simplifies to just positive 1. The distributive property, if we go back to this, you would multiply each part. Well, we have to do the opposite. We have to divide each part. Okay. 9y squared minus 3y divided by negative 3y. Well, if you recall, if you were dividing by a fraction, you can multiply by the reciprocal. Okay? So the reciprocal of negative y over 3 is going to be negative 3 over y. Okay? So each part is actually going to be multiplied by negative 3 over y. So we end up with 9y squared minus 3y multiplied by negative 3 over y. And the distributive property says we need to multiply both parts by negative 3 over y. So you're going to get negative 27 y squared over y added to 9 y over y. And that's each part. So 9y squared multiplied by negative 3 over y, and negative 3y multiplied by negative 3 over y. All right. And we can simplify this. These y's will simplify a little bit to just y. And then similarly, these will also simplify to 1. So you're left with negative 27y plus 9. The area of a rectangle is given by the expression 20x squared minus 4x squared. So let's draw a picture here. We've got area equaling 20x squared minus 4x, and the width is 4x. Determine the length. Well, if you recall, area equals length multiplied by width, so the length is going to equal the area divided by the width. So let's take our area, 20x squared minus 4x, and divide that by 4x. Now each part is going to be divided by 4x. So we're going to end up with 5x minus 1. Okay. Therefore, the length of the rectangle is 5x minus 1. All right, given the figure below, write a polynomial expression to represent the area of the shaded region. All right, so we have to do a little figuring out here. Now, yesterday I talked about, make the problem, but just with simpler, smaller numbers. So draw the same thing if this is 10 and this is 8 or something. And then we've got this scenario where we've got, 2 and 6. So how would you figure out the area? Well, first of all, you'd have to figure out the entire area. And then you'd have to figure out the area of the triangle and subtract. So we've got to do two things. We've got to figure out the area of the big rectangle, and we've got to figure out the area of the triangle. So let's start with the rectangle. So the area of the rectangle is length multiplied by width, and if the length is 8m and the width is 5m plus 2, we're going to get 8m multiplied by 5m plus 2. So we're going to end up with 40m squared plus 16m. Perfect. Now we have to figure out the area of the triangle. Now the area of a triangle is base multiplied by height divided by 2. Because any triangle is basically a rectangle but just divided by 2. So base times height is basically length times width, and then you got to divide it by 2. So let's call our base 6m minus 2, and our height is going to be 4m. So the area is going to be 4m multiplied by 6m minus 2, but then we got to divide it by 2. So the numerator becomes 24m squared minus 8m, and then we got to divide it by 2. So the area of the triangle is going to be 12m squared minus 4m. All right, so we got these two areas. So we're going to take the area of the rectangle, and we're going to subtract the area of the triangle to figure out the shaded portion. So we got to do 40m squared plus 16m minus 12m squared minus 4m. Now the distributive property says that I need to distribute this negative. That's yesterday's lesson. So we end up with 40m squared plus 16m minus 12m squared plus 4m, and the 40m squared and the negative 12m squared will simplify to 28m squared, and the 16m and the 4m will simplify to 20m. So there's your answer. The area of the shaded portion is going to be 28m squared plus 20m.